Bipolar mania with psychosis was, without question, the most chaotic and turbulent time period of my life. I'm 27 years old, and this manic episode happened during my junior year of university. Over the course of my 6 month long manic episode, I experienced a wide array of delusions, hallucinations. My symptoms were largely characterized by a decreased need for sleep, intense amounts of energy, which I could never utilize all of. I had flight of ideas. I talked speedily. There were a whole bunch of things. And under these circumstances, I made an eclectic range of detrimental decisions, some of which continue to have an impact on myself today. They all have an impact on my psyche today, on my mental health today to some varying degree, although to a lesser extent than they once did. So let's dive right into it with the first manic decision. These aren't in order of like, worst to, most worst to least worst, anything like that. There is no order. I just picked out a few and kind of went with it. So the first one that I'll talk about is when I rented a Hummer limo. It cost in excess of $1,000. I was at my cousin's house at the time, and I remember calling a few different places, and I believe it was the second place that agreed to come and pick me up on the spot. It was very late at night. I got onto the Hummer limo with a lot of belongings and paid the bulk of what it cost. It came with its own driver, by the way, which is quite interesting. And we went to my hometown of Webster. Once we got there, we stopped at a few different places. One of the places we stopped was McDonald's. I remember going into the McDonald's and FaceTiming my friend Jeremy, telling him, dude, you have to come with me. There's going to be a massive quit. Everybody's going to be quitting their jobs, quitting school, and you have to, meet up with me and we'll talk things through about what's going to transpire. Totally absurd. And he's like, hey man, I can't just, I'm literally at work. I can't just leave my job, as any rational person would say. Anyhow, I end up ordering 4 large iced coffees. And I take those 4 large iced coffees. I return to the Hummer limo. And from there, we went and stopped at a church reactory, a Catholic church reactory, right down the street. At this Catholic church reactory, I signed my name in on the guest list as Jesus and left a side note that said, I'm back. Okay. I know it's total blasphemy, and I am a believer in God, by the way, so I'm not particularly proud of this memory, but it's hard to look back on this and not laugh and derive some sense of, comedic relief, right? I laugh to cope, and I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. So I ended up leaving the church reactory, and at another point we stopped at a Baptist church which was open at the time. It was very late at night. I went in and talked to the pastor, and I can't remember exactly what we talked about, but it had something to do with confronting the devil, and I wanted him to come with me to Amherst. And I remember as I was walking out of the church, one of the members of the church, I could hear her saying, oh my God, let's pray for him. Something to that effect. So I definitely didn't sound rational. I didn't sound like I was okay, and the reason for that is I was not either of those things. And this was hardly the first crazy conversation I had with someone from a church. Another crazy conversation I had, and this goes with kind of just crazy conversations in general. One which involved the Catholic father of the Catholic Church, which is associated with the reactory I went to. This was on a separate day now. I arranged a meeting with the Catholic father and told him how I was related to the Kennedys and that people were after me to assassinate me, the same ones who assassinated JFK. And I remember at some point he just couldn't deal with what he was faced with. understandably. He got up, opened the door, and said, "I'll see what I can do," and then shut the door and locked it. And that was that. I never heard back from him again. I wish I could speak with him and not apologize necessarily, but just kind of provide some context about what was going on. I hope that he understands that, I'm not just this deranged person who believes in all these crazy things. It was just a time period of my life during which I believed those things, and it was because of the mania with psychosis. Other crazy conversations I had, well, there was one where I cursed out a member of my family while I was visiting at her house, and as a result, I had to take my luggage, which was a lot, and walk all the way to the other side of the town and have a different cousin pick me up so that, I wouldn't be stranded in the middle of the night in the city of Taunton. And yeah, that was that. Not really too much there. And the cursing out was attributed to the fact that my cousin was like talking badly about other members of the family. And in my manic state, I took great offense to that. I know, right? Such a moral guy sticking up for those not there. Well, yeah, I did it to a little bit of an extreme and was getting extremely loud. And with my fast talking at the time, I sounded like a delusional auctioneer. I was also telling these same cousins that I flipped out on that the CIA was after me, and I was working on behalf of this person or this person, and I'm the only one who could stop what's coming. There's going to be an attack, and just all kinds of crazy delusional stuff. My conversations didn't just take place offline, they also took place online. A lot. My social media use during this time period was quite prominent. I disseminated all kinds of nonsensical ideas, whichever ones were occurring in my mind, to my entire reach, to my entire network. I was posting on LinkedIn, I was posting on Facebook, I was posting on Snapchat, I was posting on Instagram, I was posting on Twitter. On a couple of these platforms, I actually got banned. I was posting on TikTok, right? I had an account that got banned from TikTok due to profanity and violation of the terms of service. I had an Instagram account which got banned, which I feel a lot of shame of because I had my Instagram account in use as a sort of journal in a way, a documentation of memories, highlights from my life, of competitions I've won, of friendships and events we had together at school, outside of school, mock trial tournaments. Just a documentation of memories of my life that I cherished, and those memories are gone. I don't have spare photos of everything I lost. And so having my account banned, I lost a lot of memories as a result. But I guess it was deserved given what I was saying and doing on social media. I remember on Instagram, I had like 100 stories or whatever the max is. I had the max, if there even is one. It might just be ad infinitum, put as many as you want, which certainly felt like the case with me. And lots of people on my list were looking at my stories, and I was saying all this crazy delusional stuff that Noah's Ark is coming and only a few people will make it. Come to my side and we're going to work against the devil. We're going to work against the Nazis who are trying to assassinate me. And all my friends were looking at these posts. My fraternity brothers were looking at these posts. I started lashing out at my own fraternity brothers, same ones who had visited me in the hospital when I was hospitalized. It was quite a terrifying time to be alive for myself. The mania very quickly went from being something I derived a lot of confidence from and had like a little bit of productivity from in the beginning due to that bolstered confidence, but it was quickly replaced with delusions of grandeur, eosity, and so forth. Another thing I did, and this kind of ties in with the Hummer limo, is I went on an absolute spending frenzy. I entered the fall semester of university, 2021, at UMass Amherst, with quite a lot of money saved up. And I spent all of it. A great deal of it was on, to my everlasting shame, alcohol. I drank lots of alcohol as I know it's not a coping mechanism, but it was my way of dealing with the delusions and hallucinations that I experienced because I was scared of them. I was genuinely scared. I would barricade myself in my fraternity house inside my room upstairs because I was afraid that people were going to get me. I carried a pocket knife on my person at all times because I was afraid that people were going to get me. But it wasn't just alcohol. I spent money on everything you can imagine. Fake jewelry, NBA championship rings, fake ones, obviously. Thank God I didn't have enough to buy a real one because I probably would have. NASCAR cards, a video game about the Knights Templar, and I could go on and on. There were so many different things that I purchased, and my bank account plummeted as a result. Going on, returning to this talk about school and education, this is something that affected me for a long time. My failure to withdraw from classes for spring semester at my former university, which I ultimately got expelled from, which I'll get to in a moment. Failure to withdraw from those classes and then later getting expelled resulted in me having like a $6,000+ fee that I had to pay to the university, and they wouldn't release my transcripts unless I did so. Fortunately, there was policy enacted during the Biden administration where universities could no longer withhold transcript for credits that you completed. So I was able to get my transcript without having to pay off that $6,000, thankfully, which allowed me to return to college, and I'm very grateful for that. But failure to withdraw from classes, it did delay my return to college for years because I wasn't able to pay off the money to get my transcript. Beyond the spending frenzy, I know I said I wasn't ranking these in order of least worst to most worst or anything, but this last one happens to be, I would say, the worst decision I made while manic. And that was getting into a fight with one of my former close friends. I'm not going to say his name, but while I was manic, I came under the belief that a friend I was with at the time was part of a plot to kill me, and we got into a fight. And I caused it because I pushed him while he was getting into his car because I thought that he was like reaching for a gun or something, and I genuinely believed that. Of course, there wasn't a gun, and he wasn't trying to kill me, but that's what I believed. Thankfully, nobody was like seriously hurt by the fight, but I mean, it was still very traumatic. It was traumatic for myself too, not just the person I fought. Well, I can't speak on behalf of him, I don't know, but I assume it was traumatic for him as well. And I do feel a lot of shame and regret about that. When this fight happened, I actually got arrested, of course. And that's one reason why this is the worst decision I made. I spent 5 days in jail. And while I was in jail, I was totally delusional. I thought that the milk cartons had like secret messages to help me break out of jail. I thought, again, that some of the inmates were after me. I thought other inmates were trying to help me. I remember banging my head on the glass door because one of the inmates said it was like a force field that we could step through, and I believed him. Unfortunately believed him and banged my head. I tried setting like the fire alarm or the sprinklers off. I was like climbing the walls of my jail and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I have other videos where I talk about being in jail while manic more extensively if you want to check those out. But that's not the main point of this video. It's just to talk about how it was one of the worst decisions I made. And making phone calls from the jail was very frustrating in hindsight because I made phone calls to family where I said a lot of accusatory things about them, about others, and their intentions. And I was highly questioning of other people's intentions. And it's just something that I regret. So there's a lot, as you can tell, that I regret about my manic episode. I made a lot of incredibly terrible decisions during that time period. And what I would say to those who pass judgment on someone like myself is try and understand where I'm coming from. Picture what it would be like to have someone hijack your life, to possess your mind. Imagine what it would be like to have your own brain working against you, working antithetical to your beliefs and your ideals. When you lose control of your central command center, there's not much, if anything, you can do. There's nothing going back that I really could have done in these situations to mitigate the severity. I mean, not drinking alcohol would have certainly helped. So I take that back. That's a qualifier right there. But I didn't have the insight to know that it was a reckless decision, is the point I'm trying to draw attention to. I didn't have the insight to know the harm I was causing to myself and those around me, those that I care deeply about. And for the longest time after this manic episode, for years, I was profoundly depressed. I isolated and ruminated, had racing thoughts, but this time, well, in a depressive episode. And these racing thoughts encompassed pretty much everything that happened. They were related to the things I said, the things I did. Wow, that was so embarrassing, or wow, I should be so ashamed of that, and I can't believe I did this, I can't believe I did that. Whole lot of regret and uncertainty about the future, and a lot of fear. Fear about the fact that this happened, and fear that what if it happens again? Because it's a possibility. I'm on medications now which significantly reduce the probability of me ever having another manic episode like that. However, they do not eliminate the possibility of me having another severe manic episode like the one I had. And that frightens me. But this video was talking about my worst manic decisions. Thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe if you're new, and be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, or if you found anything insightful or helpful. It would mean a lot to me. And if you have any questions or something you want to comment, feel free to put it down in the comments below and I'll check it out. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Tyler Adolfo. Love, light, and tranquility to all.